Hello and welcome to my retro watches. My name is Mike. Now I've been a hobbyist watch repair or watchmaker for about 8 years, and I've been making videos of my progression through this hobby for at least 7.5 years now as well on this particular channel. And the one thing you find out with this hobby is everything is extremely expensive, and there is a tool for just about everything that you ever need to do. So in this video I'm addressing the AliExpress tools, the watchmaking tools that you can buy from China on the AliExpress sites and other sites as well, and are they worth it? Now this is just my own opinion. I'm not a professional by any stretch, and I'm sure that the professional level of tools are going to be far better quality, but that's also for that setting, and is that necessarily appropriate for home use? Who knows? But these are some of the tools that I use, and we'll go through them one by one, and I'll tell you some of the pros and cons. And like I say, it is just my opinion. I will also leave the links for the ones that I have bought, so you could actually try and buy the same one should you want to. Obviously I'm not trying to promote this by any stretch, it's just answering a question, because affordability is the name of the game, and I've started this hobby with cheap screwdrivers and cheap this and cheap that, and I've just slowly but surely upgraded along the way. And some people say you've got to have the best tools and the best things, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's just have fun in the hobby and work your way through it, and some of these I think might just help you as we go along, and I'll also tell you what not to scrimp on in many respects as well. So let's cut to the bench and let's start looking at the few tools that I want to show you. This is just a quick editor's cut. I've been editing this video, and I'm finding out now as I'm doing my research after the event, which is typical for me, I do all my videos on the fly, that a lot of the prices I mentioned of these goods that I thought I paid, I was way out. So for every one that you see, I'll put a little banner up and it will show you the actual sale and the real price that I paid. So apologies for that. I should have done my homework, and slap on the wrist for me. Okay, back to the video. So let's start off with screwdrivers. Move those out of the way for just 1 second. This is the set of screwdrivers I've had for the best part of 7 years. They came from Cousins, and they were made by this AF Switzerland brand. They are now rebadged as Cousins Own from what I can see on the website, and they were very good. They came as well in here. There's some spare ends, and the screwdriver's well constructed. They're steel of some sort, and I've always found them pretty comfortable. I tend to hold them about there and rotate with my fingers. And the critical thing with any screwdriver, really, it's all about how you dress the ends, and dressing the ends appropriately for the screws that you're trying to use. I've learnt that along the way, and I now use pretty much only this Arkansas stone in order to file them down. You know, you could scrimp with screwdrivers as long as they're comfortable, and then buy some better screwdriver blades if you wish. But this set has done me well. I have no reason to change it other than pure vanity. I was always fancying a set of the Bergen ones purely because they had bigger ends that just seemed to look a lot more comfortable. But in my Facebook group, Retro and Vintage Watches and Restorations, we have all kinds of discussions, and many people were talking about this brand from AliExpress called Kwang Yung, if that's how you pronounce it, and how those screwdrivers are particularly good. So in the latest sale, I thought, well, I'm going to buy some. These cost me £20, just £20 or 20 something pounds. I'll put a thing on the screen perhaps of what I paid in the sale. I took a chance. I just thought, well, let's have a go for 20 quid. If they're bad, I'm not going to be too worried. Now you can buy them with the fancy twizzly stands, which regrettably I wish I had now. These are really, really good. This is all nice knurling. That's very, very comfortable. It's been, well, either chemically blacked or it's not anodized. I don't know what it is, but it's a nice feature. But it's very grippy, and the top here, they seem to be running on bearings. This is all aluminium construction. and as you can see, it's just more comfortable and grippy to turn. The jaw is out on the ends that have came with it. They are dressed nice and sharp, of course, and they are the right sizes for the kit. But you know how soft metal they are, I don't know. But again, the good thing is you can just go and buy some Bergen or some Horia or whatever you want, different bladed ends should you wish. I've found these, I won't say they're a game changer because I'm just used to using screwdrivers, but value for money, it is exceptional, and I would probably say they are better than the set that I've been using all these years, just on a comfort level. And when you have this bigger end here, you just seem to have more control when you're trying to take out certainly little screws in particular. This set has also come with these little tubes here, and if I can actually open one, there are also a spare end look as well, which is incredible really for the money that I've paid for those. So I would recommend these, certainly if you're starting out. That's on the affordable scale, and they're going to do you very, very well. But you'll need to learn how to dress your blades. If you want to see a video on that, then let me know in the comments, and perhaps I'll make a video on things like that, or how I do it. There are also videos already out there, to be fair, from much better people than myself, like Carl Slap, for instance, at Chronoglide. He's got a great video on that, and he definitely knows what he's talking about. So there we go, that is some screwdrivers. Now I'm going to talk quickly about tweezers. Alright, this is nothing to do with AliExpress, because I would never recommend to buy cheap tweezers. I've bought cheap tweezers when I started and regretted them. I now predominantly only use this set here, which are Dumont High-Tech size 00. You won't believe this, or the regular watchers, or the people who do this as a hobby. I've had these tweezers probably 6 years, 5-6 years, and I've never had to dress the ends once. They are that good quality. They were from Cousins, 20-something pounds, and I've never ever looked back. The beauty of quality tweezers, and Dumont are good quality tweezers, is that when you actually squeeze them, if you squeeze tweezers too hard, the cheap ones, they actually come apart at the ends ever so slightly. You squeeze it and it sort of, I can't demonstrate my fingers, it sort of does that right at the tips, and that's what makes parts fly across the room. And yeah, good tweezers have good control. Find the ones that are good for you. It's like a pool player in his cue, or a snooker player in his cue. You know, you've got a feel for a pair of tweezers, and then when you try something else, you can't use them as much. They're the main pair I use. I do have some titanium tweezers when I need them, some brass tweezers which I really don't like, some very small hairspring type ones. Again, these are all Dumont, and then I've got a very heavy duty 00 set as well from Dumont for particular springs that I use. As you can see, they're considerably thicker, and they are my main go-to. So never scrimp on your tweezers. You know, even if you don't take to the hobby, you will have a very good pair of tweezers, and they'll always come in handy. While I'm here as well, I mean, I'm drifting off the topic really, but people mention this in my video. This is my sticky pen, I call it. It's a sticky picker-upper, and it has just this little red sort of gel stuff on the end, and it's great for picking up little springs and bits and pieces. Again, bought it from Cousins, about a couple of pounds, and I think they're called sticky pens. This is the movement holder I use in my videos, and I only really use it in my videos. It cost me about £50 at the time when it came out. It was a few years ago. They're now sort of £20–30. They have very specific movement rings though, and not all fits. They've got certain caliber numbers written onto them, and the way it kind of works is you put that in there, you tighten it up, and you've got a split collet essentially. So it's just squeezing that, and that holds that tight into there and grips the movement. This little screw here will stop it from spinning around, because this movement holder spins, which is great for just turning the movement around and working on it. I like it for filming because I'm not then moving it out of shot accidentally. If it's there, it's always going to be there in shot in the cameras, and for me that's very, very useful. The only problem is that these movement rings are limiting. They don't fit everything, and that is the downside. I have got this very, well, it's an antique, not an antique, it's a vintage watch tool. It was by a company called Star, it says it under here, and as you can see it's an adjustable movement holder, and I just took it to work. I work in engineering and we've got a lathe, so I've got one of the turners to turn that down for me so it fits nice and snugly into the holder. The only drawback with that, of course, as you will see, is that it does make it rather tall, but again I just use that in the main for the videos. But it's not a bad buy. I know some guys have bought it and posted in the Facebook group, and they thoroughly enjoy using it, so there we go. Thought I'd mention that. While I'm at it, you can buy the movement cushions. This one was actually bought for me from a viewer called Walter. Thank you very much, mate, that was very kind of you. And yeah, these come from China. These are really good. As you can see, look, they're like some silicone or something. Very, very useful, and you use them all the time. I have got a leatherette one as well, but my preference is now that for you putting your dials on, putting your movement on to do bits and pieces. Well worth having, and again, buy those on AliExpress for not a lot of money. A few little sundries to show you really. Bought these in the last sale as well. They're just some sort of hard nylon plastic. They're slightly different sizes, not that you would see on camera. And yeah, that is almost replacing pegwood. Not for cleaning, because pegwood is very important for cleaning your jewels, but just for like holding a spring or holding a plate so you're not scratching it. And you can see they've got like a flat sort of screwdriver end almost. And again, that's quite useful for pushing down on parts. Those were literally, I think, £2 or £3. What a buy they were. Then moves on to the next little find that I found. So I keep dials when I'm working on watches in these little dial protectors that you can buy again from Cousins, and now they're not the cheapest of things. I don't remember what they are. I'll look it up and I'll put it on the screen now from Cousins, but typically in China you can find ones that look a little bit different. They are a little bit thicker, for instance, but they do the same job, and these were, I don't know now, £1 each or something daft like that. So I bought an absolute load of them. Really useful little things to have. Still going off on a tangent a little bit, and I know you're here to see the AliExpress tools. These are things that I would not scrimp on at all. Buy genuine Rodico. It's far better than any non-Rodico product, in my opinion at least. I use both. I've got the green and the grey. My preference is the grey one, the premium. It's just a little bit more tacky, but it still doesn't leave any marks. But that again is down to preference. Should you need a crystal lift, and you will do working in this hobby, because some watches are what we call front loaders and you can only get into them from the front, so you've got to remove the crystal by one of these sort of claws. Equally, some crystals you can only fit using these. The cheap ones are exactly that. They're very cheap. They don't always grip. From what this is only going from what I've been told and what people say again in our Facebook group, that they complain, and I guess it's all down to the quality of the teeth and possibly the angle as well. This one here is a genuine version one, and these are always on eBay, so try and save up and buy a good one, because the last thing you want is to either damage a bezel or a crystal, or even worse, a dial, by using a tool that isn't really up for the job. This is just part of it as well, which is the little plate you put the crystal on so you can then grip it. The Presto tools, if you use a Presto tool to remove hands, I generally don't anymore. I use Horia hand levers. Another thing I wouldn't scrimp on is buying the 2.5 Horia levers. They're the best thing you'll ever use. Don't try and buy the cheap versions because they're not as good. these do serve a purpose, and again they're all different types actually that I have here for different jobs, but the basic plain ones are like this. The cheap ones, and I've had lots of cheap ones, they just break, they go wrong here generally, and they're not as good. So these again are always on eBay and places like that as an old vintage used item. You'll find one. General advice is to try and polish the ends here as much as you might put something on the dial to protect the dial. If you have that polished as well, then you're just limiting any possibility of scratching. So there we go. There's a few things that I don't recommend you buy from China. Okay, this is the last tool I think I can show you by holding in the hand before we get on to the bigger items. This is a recent pickup again, and this is, well, you could use this for lots of different things. It is in theory for tightening up hand tubes, so if you've got a second hand that's a bit loose, you can put it in the appropriate hole and squash it. If I try and hold it a bit closer, you can see it's all marked up like that. But you can also use it for many different applications, because you've basically got the sizes, so you could almost use it for a gauge along with just trying to grip things. It's solidly made. Look, it's made out of solid brass. These blades seem to be very well constructed, to be honest with you. I haven't used it in anger yet, but I bought it because it was just £20. You couldn't even buy the piece of brass probably for £20, certainly not here in the UK. That is a tool that you'll use once every now and again, and you'll be glad that it's on your bench at the time, because it'll be one of those jobs that's saving your life at the time. So well worth investing in something like that. Okay, hand pushers. So this is a bit more of a big ticket item. I can't recall exactly how much I paid for this tool here, 70 or even 80 pounds. Ironically, Cousins UK are now selling exactly the same tool, probably from the same source in China, for twice the price. Is it worth it? Well, for me, it is. It is a big expense, I guess, if you're starting out in this hobby and you would possibly prefer to use the conventional hand pushers. I've not scrimped on those either. I've got Horia ones of those. I have had cheap versions, which are kind of okay, but what always used to happen with the £5 set or whatever they would be, is the plastic tips would fall off, which isn't very good. The idea of this tool is that it comes down straight. Now, this is very well made, to be honest with you. These aren't loose, particularly inside, and the whole idea, of course, is you want to push your hand square on so you're not tilting it either way and having to adjust at a later date. You just click it across like this, as you can see, plunge them down. You have this little movement holder that it comes with it. You can see it's got like a little spike in the middle, and there's a little screw at the bottom. That's basically to adjust the height. So if you've got any of these watches, if you watch my Rolex video, for instance, there is a second hand pivot at the bottom which has a little spring on it. So when you're trying to push the second hand on, that spring needs support, or else you're just going to damage things, and that's what that little spike is for. I bought this, they called it a table, which was an extra piece to buy. It's about £15, and again, that can be useful for, well, again, still using it mainly for putting hands on. You can see that it still comes down right in the center. There is adjustment on that one as well, should you need to put anything up. So the two of them are very useful. I found that the tips, actually, as you can just see, they've got a color coordinated band. That one's red and yellow and so forth, and it's all in a size order. This is the biggest, this is the smallest. When this tool turned up, these were all mixed up. They weren't in the right order at all. They're easily unscrewable, and from what I'm told, you can buy the version equivalent of these and they will fit at exactly the same thread size and everything else that goes with it. So you can upgrade it should you wish to. I now can't screw that back in, but that's another story. So there we go, that is a hand pusher, a great addition to the bench. Right, this little tool is one of the my bad purchases, if you like. In principle, it's a great little thing. It's for removing the roller tables on your balance should you want to do a staff change, and it's got a very handy sort of gauge on the top, as you can see, all these different sized holes, and then you have these cutaways where you'd put your balance wheel in to remove the roller, and then you have as well the punches with very small holes at the top and two little type of anvils, for want of better words. You can use this for lots of different things. It comes out of this little plastic stand there. However, I bought probably version 1, and version 1 is no good for its use. Don't know if I can get it to show you very easily. If we look at these cutouts, the problem with them is they're almost like a blade, and that in there should be flat and like a little step. Because it's a blade, you end up potentially bending your balance wheel. So there are later versions of this that I've seen that now have the flats inside that cutaway, and those are the ones you'd want. It wasn't very expensive. I think it was £20 again, something along those lines. And in fairness, it's still on the bench because I use it a lot. I put watch hands in these holes, for instance, sometimes to, if I want to polish the hand, I know I've got a whole set of holes and one will fit it quite comfortably. So it has a use, but it's not being used what it was intended for. But there you go, you live and you learn. But yeah, the version 2 is probably okay. Next up is the cheapo screw extractor, and this is if you have a screw in a main plate, for instance, and the head sheared off, and you're able to access the bottom of the screw and the sheared head, then in theory you can basically use these, like the little drills, for want of a better word, and then you put your main plate in here and you clamp the two up and tighten it, and it would grip the screw in place, and then you would turn the main plate here, for instance. I think I've got a video that shows it in one of the restorations I've done, and in theory it'll then wind out the screw for you. The thing I found with this is, you know, it's got all the right tools in the right places. It's the same, it's a clone of, you know, the major brands of the tool, and in fairness it has saved my life on a couple of occasions. The problem is the drills it comes with are either too big or they're just rubbish. You only need to use the tiny point on the end of the drill for it to grip the screw, and you can buy some quite cheap drill sets that go down, I think, to 0.2 millimeters or something like that, and I've used those to great effect, but they also are very cheap and they break all the time because they don't like stress, they're drilling straight, if you like. This is one here that is probably broken, and I've sharpened the end with my sanding machine to try and keep using it. So it is a tool that you will need at some point. We all break screws. There are other versions of this from China. Equally, you can try and buy a decent brand one. You know, always look for vintage tools where you can, if you think it's going to have value on your bench, because the more the tool you use, the more you get used to it. So this serves a purpose, but it's not superb. We're now looking at the jeweling tool, which is the Horia tool clone, and there's lots of discussion online about these in particular, that some people have had really bad sets that don't match up and don't line up down here. Mine, nice and central. The micrometer part of the, I'm trying to see if I can zoom in here so you could see. So yes, you know, you have your micrometer here that you can use, and that will give you your sort of depth reading should you need it. This feels okay. Now I work in engineering. I do use micrometers, proper micrometers from Mitutoyo and Moore and Wright and people like that, and they feel a lot smoother than this does. But it's good enough to push your jewel out. It comes with a whole set of anvils, and they're all sized as well, as you can see here. So you've got all the different bases that have a hole so the jewel will fall through, and then the actual bit themselves is kind of spring loaded, so you can just, hopefully you can see that going in and out. That's for sort of centering into the center of the jewel so it's in position properly, and then the anvil itself will push the jewel through, and you want to make sure, of course, that it's actually traveling through the bottom one as well. That way you will definitely push things out. But yeah, this wasn't cheap. I'm putting everything in the wrong place now. Yes, it wasn't the cheapest of sets. I'll put a price up on the screen now what I paid for it. But I've used this on many occasions. When you've got a broken jewel, changing a jewel with this thing it's just a matter of minutes. You can push it out as long as you've got a spare. Just put the other one back in, no problem at all. You might need to do a bit of fine adjustment for end shake, but it does make it very easy. The only downside with this particular type of jeweling tool is that you can't ream on it. There's no way to take this out and put a reamer down should you want to open a hole out to put or you want to jewel a hole, for instance, like a barrel arbor, or you just need to fit a different size jewel into a hole. It's a shame that so far the Favorite or the Signs type jeweling tools that you see on eBay haven't been cloned yet. I'm after a proper set, to be honest. They're not the cheapest of things by any stretch, but I'm at that level now where I do need to occasionally ream a hole. But again, not a bad tool to have, and at least mine is absolutely dead straight and I've had no problems with it whatsoever. Okay, this is my Caseback opener that I've just bought only in the last sale, and I paid just under £40 for it, which was absolutely crazy. And I didn't think it'd be any good. I thought it'd be rubbish because of the price, because they range from like £100 right down to, well, what I paid for this. And I just thought, stuff it, I'm going to buy it and see what it's like. And I've been actually very pleasantly surprised. How long it's going to last, I don't know. It is extremely light. This is obviously some sort of aluminium type casting. It's probably hollow in there as well, but the functionality is superb. It does everything that I want it to do. You have to assemble it a little bit, but you can see here right to the front, these are all the different attachments that you might need to get into a case back, so you can get, line up on the lugs there. You have this table here which you can adjust to grip things should you need to, but this lifts off, and how it actually works is very good. So if you've got a we'll take this one for instance, you've got your watch, it hasn't got the strap on it or anything like that. We look at the lug size. I've got this tool here for that, and it's 18mm. When we look at these things at the back here, they have numbers on them. If I just try and zoom in a little bit, don't know whether you can see that or not. We've got 17 and 19. It turns out that there isn't an 18 block, but what these are for, so if we went on the 17, we're going to put the 17 there, and we'll put the 17 on this side. We'll try and close this up a little bit, and the way this will work, I've now closed it up too much, look, is it grips in between the lugs, which is perfect. It's going to give you plenty of purchase for when you want to turn. This thing here is on a spring, as you can see. You can adjust that so it can go higher. It's like your stop, for want of a better word, or you can go lower, of course. You would then move these into position, push down. I'm not going to do it because I can't see it because I'm hampered by the camera. But yeah, you'd push down, locate it, and then you can turn, tighten and loosen to your heart's content. The big wheel on the top gives you plenty of purchase. My worry was because the tool is so light that it wouldn't have enough well, it'd be too light to take the force of turning, because some case backs on vintage watches are on solid. They've never, some of these Seikos, for instance, I work on, I don't think the case back's been off for 40 years. But because you are pushing down on the top, I think that's enough to give you the friction that's needed to keep it on your bench without slipping. So it's a very versatile tool, along with this bit here. For the money I paid, I find it absolutely incredible. Perhaps it won't last, perhaps something will break on it, I don't know. But it seems solidly enough. I'm guessing probably the weak parts might actually be these blocks, and perhaps the pins on the bottom might snap out if you put in too much force in them. I've not seen that you can buy replacements, so we'll see how we get on. You know, whether the ones that are £60, for instance, are any better than this one, I don't know. I'm guessing they probably have got levels of quality within this tool. You know, this one says key of watch. Yes, that's great. Means absolutely nothing in English, does it? Key of watch. And then we have the brand here. What's that? Ling Hu, with a number on it, which is probably a copy of the Bergen tool number or something like that. But yeah, for the money I paid, I'm not going to moan about it. It's probably going to see me out for quite some time. So if it does ever break, perhaps I'll let you know. But there you go. Few more items to go. Goes without saying, Timegrapher. Everybody uses pretty much the same Timegrapher, unless you've got £1,000 or more to buy the proper witchy one from Switzerland. There's 2 or 3 different versions of it. I've just got the base 1000 model. Works absolutely fine, and you can't do this hobby unless you've got a Timegrapher. If you want to go for accuracy, you need one of these machines. And you can buy them on Amazon in England, in the country you're in, or you can buy them direct from China. It's always going to be the same unit. It's just a case of having the right plug on the end. So invest in a Timegrapher. These do a good enough job. They do have some limitations, but in the main, they're pretty decent. My bench is becoming a bit of a dumping ground now. Microscopes. So you can buy microscopes to your heart's content. You can buy cheap Chinese things, you can buy more expensive ones. I have always preferred my AM stereoscope for working. I prefer the fact that you can look through the lens and you have a sense of, or a perception of depth and everything else. The digital microscopes, I've reviewed a few of them. This is the latest one from Link Micro they've sent me, actually, and I'm loving this one because I record on it. It does 4K. I can put it on a big screen should I want to. It records sound. It's very good for taking photographs and video that, again, if you're in watch communities online, then you can be able to capture your images or your video and post your problems online and hopefully get an answer. So there is there is use for both tools, basically. If you were going to buy a microscope, probably get, I mean, these AM scopes are really good. The ones with a boom arm mean that you can work under it better. I'm actually now contemplating buying one that's called a trinocular, because then you can put a camera on it, and seeing how good I can use that, certainly for the videos that I make on the channel. I'm actually also contemplating going down the Chinese route, because the AM one that I'm looking at is about £500, which for me is quite a lot of money. And there are Chinese versions of it, and I'm kind of tempted to perhaps risk it and try it, and see if the optics are just as good. So, you know, microscopes eventually will be a game changer. If you're just starting out in the hobby, you don't need one from day one, but as you progress, once you get one, you know that there's no going back. I mean, I got this and realized that my cleaning process at the time, what I thought was clean, when I put it under the microscope, it was still really, really dirty. So I learned a lot. But this was £120 perhaps, but that was a long time ago. And the digital microscopes are in and around that sort of money, if not more, actually. And they are versatile, but working and looking at a screen is a lot harder, I find, than looking through the stereoscope and what you're doing there. I still like to use loupes, and, well, I use a clip-on my glasses, actually. Quite traditional in that respect. I don't want to do everything on a microscope. I'll inspect and I'll oil and that's about it. So there we go. You can get microscopes from AliExpress, no problem at all, and they'll serve you well for what you're going to use them for. Okay, pressure testers for your waterproofing. Is this a tool you really need? Unless you're working on loads of dive watches, not really. I have never rated any of my watches for water resistance. I kind of think a vintage watch is a vintage watch. You can change the gaskets on the crown, on the case, but you just don't know. Water still might get in from, you know, sloppier tolerances on the pendant tube or something on the crystal. But you can buy these from China. This one is from China, although it's actually sent to me from a friend of mine in Scotland who sold it me rather than buy it from China, but that's where he got his from. I showed this in the Seiko Turtle video I did recently. It works absolutely fine. It does to 5 bar from memory. And yeah, if you want to buy one, then go out and get one. They tend to work pretty well. It doesn't leak or anything. I have bent the top here accidentally, but that's another story. But it's not an essential piece of kit, but, you know, I just picked it up for the odd occasion that perhaps I need to test something, usually on a customer's watch rather than anything of my own. This is what I use for putting crystals on, and this is the Bergen tool. So it's the Bergen 5500. You can buy a clone of this, exact clone of this, from China, and it probably does just as good of a job. I just happened to get a deal on the original one. I have mounted it to a piece of solid tool steel just to give it a bit of weight. And in this box here, I've got all the aluminium dies that I need. And because I've had several plastic versions, plastic die crystal presses, I've still kept those as well because they can be quite useful from time to time. The really cheap ones, they don't really work as well. You get a lot of sort of sloppiness here, and as a result you're not always pushing down. You might be pushing slightly off center, and anything that's off center will put more pressure on one part than another. And if it's a glass crystal, if it's not going in absolutely square with you know, constant pressure all the way around in the right place, you will crack it. I only cracked a crystal only 2 weeks ago using this very tool. For that reason, it just wasn't sitting quite right. So again, you can get away with the cheap ones, but you know, eventually you'll probably upgrade to something more sturdy. Anything that's sort of pushing up and down, you know, you want the quality because you want that consistency, the tighter tolerances in here for that reason, obviously. So it's you know, it's going straight down to its center. There we go. I think I've only got one more item that I want to show you. I could show you lots of other different things, but actually, while I'm here, 2 other things I don't scrimp on. One is Lume. I use the Bergen Lume kit. I've found that, I don't know, I've used very cheap Lume to great effect. The difference with the Bergen Lume is the powder's just a lot finer, and when you bond it, it just does a more professional job, I think is the right word. Winders. This is my set of spring winders for mainsprings. I have no experience with the Chinese versions. I've heard good and bad stories of them. But from an engineering point of view, you know, as long as they have the steel anvils here, if that's the right word, and they have a hook at the bottom, as long as they're all steel, in theory they should be okay. But I guess it also comes down to the sizes. Are the diameters the most useful diameters? I was fortunate. I bought this. This is a vintage set, I think, of Bergen, and I bought that off a good friend of mine a few years back, and they served me quite well. So maybe at some point, say if enough of you like this video, or leave a comment down below on it, then I will buy the Chinese set and I'll compare like for like. How about that? If you want to see that, leave a comment down below. Okay, an essential piece of equipment is the Demagnetiser. Magnetism in watches, if you don't know, is your enemy because it'll upset the running. So you want to try and demagnetize at all costs. And most of us, a lot of people use this little blue brick here that you can buy. And that all comes from China. And you press the button, and here's your watch, for instance, or your movement. You'd press the button and you're going to keep drawing it away, and you're interfering with all the electrons and slowly but surely demagnetizing it. I'm going to show you a couple of clips now from my work, actually, because I work in engineering. We do a thing called surface grinding, for instance, where we have giant electromagnetic chucks that we then have to demagnetize the steel or the jobs that we've been grinding to get them off the chuck. And when we press the demagnetize, it literally pulses, and you'll be able to see it hopefully on the screen here now. And it'll pulse, and that is obviously just making sure that all the magnetism's out, and it works an absolute treat. So these bricks, some people have had big problems with them, that if they leave them plugged in for any length of time, they get very hot or they start melting. And that has not happened to me. I've had this one for years and years and years and years. It's never let me down, but I've always had that in the back of my mind. And as a result, every time I leave my bench, I switch the main plug off for my bench, just to be sure. And that's a worry. You don't want a tool that potentially is going to catch fire, do you? So I've recently invested in this. I've actually bought a similar one to this from Japan, different make, and a vintage version actually, which was fine, but I was getting very lazy from pulling this up and down all the time, and I wanted the one push button solution, which is what this one is here. This cost me, I think it was either 30 or 40 pounds, and I'm not sure exactly how it works. Because it'll do it in literally one push of a button. So if I take this screwdriver, for instance, we've got a compass here. Hopefully there's a bit of light reflection, isn't there? Let's put it somewhere like that. So at the moment, I put that screwdriver over that compass. We're okay, we're good. I've got this little block here, and if I magnetize it, you can now see, look, that's seriously affecting that tool, that compass. If I then place that on there, one press of this button, take it down to the magnet, and all that magnetism has gone in one push. I do see people using the official version. I can't remember who makes the real tool, and they'll put their movement in the movement holder there, and they'll press it like that, and then they'll turn it that way, and they'll press it again like that. And I am curious as to whether the turning is just something that everybody's created, given what I've shown you about what we do at my work with the electromagnetic chucks. What relevance has having it from that position to that position? You're not changing the poles, as far as I'm aware. So is it just a habit or a security thing? I don't know. So if you do know, obviously let me know below, because I'm curious. Always have a compass. This actually came with this compass. I have another one over here, cheap one. They're really, really useful just for passing anything over. I will tend to find, for instance, that the tweezers that I use all the time are constantly flipping magnetized. Usually not so much at the tips, but at the heel. And are we getting any movement? We're getting a little bit of movement. It's a tiny trace in there. So you need to be demagnetizing your tools and certainly your movements. I actually do mine. When I strip the movement down, I put it through the cleaning machine. They're all in these little baskets over here, for instance. So I'll put every basket on there, click, done. And I demagnetize my parts as I go along. I probably don't show that in the video because I've always had to do this, but now just having to press this one button just makes everything easier and simpler and less of a faff, because demagnetizing is pretty boring really, as much as it's the most essential thing to do. Okay, I think I've rambled on for a very long time. as I say, there are other things I could show you, like cheap ultrasonics. I've always had an ultrasonic machine and it's been reliable and good enough. But I think we've covered most, if not all, of the tools that I've bought from AliExpress. Okay guys, that's about it. I think it was more like a bench tour than anything else. I've shown you quite a lot, but trust me, in these drawers here and more drawers there, I've got loads more tools. There's a cupboard here full of stuff. There's a cupboard there full of stuff as well. It is absolutely never ending in this hobby, and I've still got a lot more tools to collect along with watches as well. So perhaps I'll show you some of those in the future, who knows. Anyway, I hope you found it useful, and yeah, you know, if you did, leave some comments below. I'm going to read every one, of course. I try to reply to as many as I can. I'd be interested to hear what you say. If any of you've got experiences with any of these tools, good or bad, leave your feedback down below, because it is going to help the community as a large. I will link all the products as well, just out of courtesy. There will be affiliate links. I'm not pressurising you to buy anything. I'm not working with any of these manufacturers at all. It is just purely my own opinion in this video. So there we go. Consider checking out my merch store, Time-Tees. There's a link down below. That's just gone live. You can buy t-shirts like this. You can buy some vintage watches that I've been working on. There's actually one on the Timegrapher here right now that will be up for sale very soon. It's got a facet crystal on it as well. Pretty nice watch. So please go and sign up, have a look there. Membership's coming very soon, where you'll be able to have more direct contact with me as well, if you would wish. So that's it. Like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching this one. See you next time. Bye for now.